I'd like to welcome Council Member Reva Chambliss, who will welcome us and kick us off.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Brooklyn Park Community Conversation. I am Metropolitan Council District 2 representative and also Vice Chair of Transportation, and glad to be hosting you today.
All right. Well, excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Chambliss. And Councilmember Chambliss has been very busy with us and raising the elevation of the conversations about the Blue Line project in Brooklyn Park. A couple of weeks ago, we were at the community college talking about it, and some of your neighbors and business owners were out there. We had a good turnout. It was in person. It was one of our first in-person events. And then last night, Councilmember Chambliss also joined us in our in-person open house at the library. So thanks again to everybody for joining us. This is a session that is being recorded. So at the end of this, please go up on our website if you've got friends and neighbors and business friends that would like to know a little bit more about the project, and they can view this at their leisure as well. My name is Sam O'Connell. I am the project lead for the Blue Line extension, and I'm joined with my colleagues Sophia Guinness and Nick Landwehr. And today, what we're really wanting to share with you is a project status and overview. Then Nick will talk a little bit about Brooklyn Park station locations, and for most of you, that just might be review because they have been in place for quite a while, but always good to cover just again, where in the community we see Blue Line serving our community members, and one of those key pieces is obviously stations. Nick will also then cover where we are also thinking of potential station locations in the other corridor communities as well. And then, as always, we want you to stay connected with us and with some of the best ways to do that. I would also mention that we recognize that this is over the lunch hour and some folks probably have 1 o'clock meetings. So we will try and keep this moving along. But then also, if you feel like you need to jump off at like 12:55, we'll keep that in mind so you don't feel like you're missing anything after that time. So with that, we can move to the next slide. Just want to folks and kind of keep this in perspective. In terms of what we're looking at for the Blue Line extension, it is the extension of the existing Blue Line service that serves downtown Minneapolis, the VA, the airport, and ultimately the Mall of America. So it would be extending that same train, if you will, coming into Minneapolis and Crystal and Robbinsdale and Brooklyn Park. So really a great way to connect a lot of our regional destinations. And it would provide a single trip basically into downtown Minneapolis and the airport and the Mall of America, like we said, but also connections to the Green Line in downtown Minneapolis. You can do kind of a cross-platform transfer to the Green Line and continue east, I was going to say west, continue east into St. Paul, and where destinations include the University of Minnesota and downtown St. Paul. So we want to share that that's part of a network. We also want to acknowledge here that for some folks that might be new to this, we did go through a significant kind of transition with the project last year. So as some folks recall, part of our alignment does sit within the Burlington Northern Santa Fe when we were looking at this alignment previously, and that was 8 miles. And through many, many attempts at negotiating with the freight railroad, it was very obvious that we would not be able to share a corridor where they could successfully operate and where we could as well. They are the property owners. We do need their permission, and we tried many ways to access that corridor. Everything from conversations with our governor and our electeds at all levels, and it just was not going to be a situation that we could resolve with the railroad. So rather than trying, Hennepin County and the Met Council decided to take back the project basically in their own hands and then provide an alternative that gives us an opportunity to actually connect maybe some more of our regional destinations with that. So that's kind of where we are. And it does feel like it's a step or two back, but ideally what we're hoping to do is that we're coming up with the best community supported route. And that is, as Nick will cover some of the options that we have here, but really, again, strengthening our corridor cities for connections, not just from Brooklyn Park into downtown, but from Crystal to Brooklyn Park and Robbinsdale to Brooklyn Park and Robbinsdale to Minneapolis and Minneapolis to all of the other points. And that's really the purpose of light rail, kind of that all-day service that connects just not to the downtown, but the communities and all the wonderful destinations and attractions there. Our hope is by the end of this year, early next, that we will have that community identified route. That is something that we will bring into the environmental process, something that we also do work with the communities and seek their consent on station locations on alignment. We also do deeper dive in our engineering. And then ultimately that leads us to construction of the project and pursuit of our commitment from the Federal Transit Administration, basically called a full funding grant agreement, where they commit to their portion of funding the corridor. Ultimately, if everything were to line up very nicely, we could maybe think about a line opening up in 2028. I know that sounds really far away, but our hope is that we are keeping you involved throughout the process and engaged as well. Because we will, some things may change a little bit, but I just want to underscore our commitment to seeing this project as being built as that fourth leg of the light rail to really service communities that are in need of some incredible transportation options here. So if we go to the next slide, I'm just going to hand this off to my colleague, Nick Landwehr, and he's going to take us through the Brooklyn Park stations and share a little bit more information about what's going on in the other corridor cities. Welcome, Nick.
Okay, well, thank you, Sam, and thank you. Thanks, folks, for attending the meeting. And my name is Nick Landwehr. I'm the Metro Transit engineering lead for the project. I've been with the project since design began way back in 2015. So as we talk about Brooklyn Park and the planned stations here, the graphic that we have in front of us shows the blue line that goes down West Broadway. And the good thing about Brooklyn Park is we were at 90% design with the plans. They remain at 90%, and Brooklyn Park, for the most part, as we get along West Broadway, was not affected by the railroad negotiations and lack of being able to come to an agreement with them. So we're in really good shape. The plans are developed, and now it's really coming back out to the community to let everybody know here's where we're at and start that conversation again. But we're in good shape. So this map shows 4 of the 5 stations that are within Brooklyn Park, and they can continue to be in the same locations. We have stations at Oak Grove up on the north end, north of 610 Oak Grove Station, down 93rd, and 93rd station that serves more of an industrial area, some of the workforce in that area. 85th is a station that serves a variety of things. North Hennepin Community College is in that area. The Hennepin County Library is in that area. There's some Center for Arts that's going to be moving forward in there, and a lot of different residential opportunities and some retail space. And then as we get down into Brooklyn Boulevard towards the south end of that blue line, it's more of a commercial area. There's a Starlight Transit Center on the west side of it where the station would be, and those will make good destinations for shopping and a chance for transit connections in this area. So next slide, please. So our considerations for Brooklyn Park, as we're looking at it, again, we're at 90%. So 4 of the 5 stations in this area are already developed, and we're in a very good place with those. What we need to look at is the area around 63rd Avenue Station that is impacted by where we were at with the railroad corridor before, and we'll need to look at how we continue to serve that station and how we get the station and actually the alignment on 81 to work in that area. And so we want to continue to engage with the rest of the corridor as we're developing it and continue our engagement here with Brooklyn Park. Next slide, please. So starting on the north end, this is some of the work that we've done. Folks that are familiar with the project, these were developed, a few years ago. They still remain, but this is up at Oak Grove Parkway, north of 610. We had a station. This was the station at the very northern terminus of the alignment. And with that station, we have a park and ride structure that's located there that is roughly about 900 stalls. So a very robust structure that would fit within the potential or the vision development of this area. Would serve the northwest suburb areas for folks that wanted to come in, park, get on a train, and continue their trips there. We do have in this area very plans for how the transportation network in this area will change, and they'll change very substantially through here. Some of the West Broadway alignment gets straightened out a little bit more on the north and south. We make a connection with Oak Grove Parkway on 101st. There is work right now on 169, or it is almost complete or complete the interchange at 169 and 101st. So that'll start putting together that transportation network in that area and set the basis for future development in the area. Next slide, please. This is a slide of how things would look with the station layout, with the footprint in it, the park and ride structure in the background. There's a lot of space up here, but there's a lot of potential for future development also. On all of these stations, as we go through, we have a center platform on the station. So it's one destination to get to either track. So depending on which direction you're going, you still go to the same station. And the key thing about these center platform stations is the footprint of the station is consistent throughout. So folks, if you're going to a station in Crystal or a station in Brooklyn Park, the equipment, the amenities are going to be in the same location. The card readers as you come onto the station for go-to cards, the ticket vending machines are in key locations. The signage to direct you to the appropriate track is there, and then there's monitors that to let you know the status of your travel and in which direction things are going. And there's the similar kiosks on there to let you know about the different transit, the times, the schedules, and things like that. The key with these stations is as we move down them, there's opportunities to make them fit within the area that they're in. So every node or every station area has their own flavor. So we're looking at the architecture of the roof, the facade, the paint schemes on these stations to help them identify and fit within that area that they're located. Next slide, please. This is a slide showing, how that closer up on the platform, how it operates with some of the signage that we have up there, the real-time video signage up on top, kiosks in there for schedules, and the waiting space, shelters for protecting folks when it's when the inclement weather, whether it's rainy or windy or cold, there's some shelter for folks. So as I talked about earlier, Oak Grove Parkway, there's a bunch of development opportunities there. This is a scheme that we've worked with the city of Brooklyn Park, with Target Corporation, who owns a lot of the property up in this area, about what the future plans, how this would lay out. And this is how it helped us develop where the future road networks would go within it, and helped us locate the station and the park and ride in this area, so which is kind of in the center of the mass here. All right, moving down to 93rd Station. Again, this is more of an industrial area. There's some biotech firms in this area, some manufacturing area, so a key destination for work, for people to get to and from work. And in this location, we're center running, so we're on West Broadway. The alignment goes down the middle of West Broadway at grade, so we'll be operating with that through traffic going through. And this station is a center platform station, and it's just south of 93rd, and the amenities, the footprint is similar to what we just looked at on the last slides. But again, we have some architecture that will fit within this area. The key thing to look at this map is, as we get in here, we look a little bit at pedestrian access. We want to key in on how we get riders, our customers, safely to the stations, from the stations, but even if you're not going to the station, how do we make that intersection more safe, more inviting, more friendly for pedestrians and bikes that are going through that area and kids? So there's a lot of key features that we look at, to develop good sidewalks and access to those stations. We're working with the city to work on landscaping, hardscaping of those corners to identify where you're at as a transit area, and then work at the safe crossings with the project. It'll be 4 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes in each direction, but we are narrowing down that road footprint and helping to bring the speed limits down to 35 miles an hour here, so it's a bit more pedestrian friendly. That narrower space that pedestrians have to walk across with the road, and on the stations, and you get to the middle, there's a safe pedestrian refuge there. So as you get to an intersection, a pedestrian can push a button, add a signal, get that pedestrian recall, be able to get to a station, or if they're at the beginning of that cycle, they should be able to get all the way across. If they're not able to, there's a refuge in that middle platform area that they can wait, push the button, wait for the next pedestrian signal to cross. So there's nice, safe access. The next slide. So this is a little bit different angle of that station, just looking northeast. We on all our platforms, we have 2 areas of access on both ends of the station. So we try to get one area, the primary area of access, at that signalized intersection, so we can, control the traffic and get folks, across there safely. But on the south end, there might not be that. Can you just go back to that last slide, please? Yeah, so on the south end of the station, it's not at an intersection, but we also want to provide safe crossing of the roadway for pedestrians. So in these locations, we're putting what's called rapid RRFBs, rapid flashing beacons that you push a button. If you're ready to cross the road, the button starts flashing to indicate to drivers to stop for the folks that are going to be in the crosswalk, so we can get across. All right, we can go to the next slide, please. So this again at 93rd station, this shows just a little bit different view of looking down the station, but shows how we can incorporate colors into the design, station design. Some of the facade is a little bit different here, a little bit more, I guess, modern industrial looking along that to fit within that area and in that theme. Next slide, please. And again, this is another plan of that 85th area station. As you look at the intersection, we try to enhance the crosswalks. We make sure that those crossings are safe. That secondary access on the south side of the station, when the pedestrians are coming across, we have some boxes in that location that turns the pedestrian towards the travel of the train. So they get that visual contact. They can see the train coming, and especially a lot of times folks are wanting to catch a train and they're running across. We want to make sure that if they're in a hurry, we're getting them to kind of focus a little bit on their surroundings and have a safe interaction as there's trains coming through this area. And this is 85th Avenue Station. I should mention that. So this is what we were looking at, was a view right over North Hennepin Community College, just south of that intersection. So this again is that secondary access. This would be coming from the college area and connecting in. So we anticipate a lot of pedestrian usage through here. Again, we can see a little bit different facades on the station to fit within the context of that area. Next slide, please. Moving down to Brooklyn Boulevard Station, again, we'll see a theme here, very consistent with how the station platforms lay out. So it's good for our operations, but it's good for our customers to make that they can become familiar. If you're familiar with one station, the rest of the stations are very consistent here. This one shows some of the commercial area in here. On the top of the screen is where the Starlight Transit Center is. So we have transit connections in this area. So we want to make sure that we have good, safe, convenient connections and ways for folks to get around with. Another thing we'll look at, it's a little bit hard to see in detail here, but there's not a park and ride in this location, but we do have robust transit connections that will happen here. But we also will evaluate these locations for folks to be able to drop off at a station. So we have that drop for pickup and drop off locations. We'll look for those for folks that as they're waiting to or dropping off a passenger, they can have a convenient place to stay, or if they're waiting for somebody to come from a train to pick them up, we'll identify locations in their area and work with property owners to identify those. Again, this is a different. Just getting a little bit of feedback there, but so this is another intersection. This is at Brooklyn Boulevard station. Again, working on at that streetscape, the street level to make it inviting and safe for pedestrians, bikes, and the traveling vehicle public. Next slide, please. All right, so. Again, as we talked about, the key is that in Brooklyn Park, we've stayed consistent along West Broadway with the alignment and the design we had for those 4 station areas. Folks that were maybe at some of our meetings 2-3 years ago, hopefully those are very familiar to you because they have not changed. So as we get down and we're looking at the rest of the alignment down to Target Field Station, we need to know we had 11 stations total along the alignment. And we need to make sure that we're still serving those communities with stations. So we're looking at potential station areas to study as we're moving forward with the realignment along the rest of the route. So what we're looking at, how are we determining? You know, we're rolling out a potential areas for discussion. We want this engagement from the public to get feedback. You know, so we've based what we're showing here on previously planned stations. That are they close to where we were having stations before within communities. We're trying to get stakeholder and community input on these to tell us, you know, are we missing something? You know, does this make sense where we're showing it? You know, is there an area that can we pinpoint a little bit more? We're showing wider areas that, you know, can we move the station around so it makes more sense and has better access and serves folks better. We're looking at key destinations along the alignment where it makes sense to where the folks are going to be traveling to and from. We're looking at transit connections as we're laying these out. And with the station areas, you know, typically we space our stations about a half mile to a mile apart. You know, we start getting more than a mile, you know, we're really not serving that community. We're getting past it. Less than a half a mile, we start to stop too often, and we really slow down the efficiency and the of the system. So, you know, that half mile as we're in more developed areas, maybe more of a mile spacing as we get farther out and more away from developments is how we look at stationing. And based on, not really based on overall number of stations, we're based on where stations make sense, where we had commitments before for stations and key opportunities going forward. So as we look at this alignment, we get on the top end of the screen, you can see the blue is where we just finished up with Brooklyn Boulevard Station. On this map, that yellow line indicates where our previous alignment was going down the freight rail corridor. The black line you see down there is County Road 81. We've identified this area as the route that we would mitigate for or move it over from that freight rail corridor. And on that route, we had a station in Brooklyn Park at 63rd Avenue that was in that rail corridor. And there is a park and ride already in that location. So this is a key transit destination. It's key for the neighborhood here for access here. We're looking to continue that station in that area, but moved over about 100 feet, you know, from where it was in the rail corridor to the middle of County Road 81. So evaluating that as a station area. As we move down into Crystal, we had a station again in that rail corridor in Crystal, just south of Bass Lake Road. That again is an area we know Crystal, that's their access to their business district along Bass Lake Road. There's Becker Park in that area. There's residential along that area that we want to continue to serve that. So we're proposing to evaluate and locate a station in that area. As we start moving down the map towards the south, you see we get into Robbinsdale, that alignment starts to diverge a little bit more from the black and yellow line, diverge a little bit more. So it gives us, you know, maybe some more opportunities and some more challenges. So we had a station before just south of 42nd Street on our previous alignment. that corresponded with the downtown Robbinsdale area. We would continue to propose to serve that downtown Robbinsdale area with a station in that area, and we're looking at anywhere between 42nd and 40th right now in that area is where we would serve. And then as we get farther south, this is a very good opportunity where at the bottom of the screen, there's a bigger oval. That's where North Memorial Hospital is. This was a destination that folks have brought up in the past to say, you know, is there some way you can get the alignment here? Can you get a train to North Memorial? Can you serve North Memorial? Well, this is now an opportunity to serve that destination. So we are looking at a station in that area. So next slide, please. As we get farther down south into North Minneapolis, we have a couple more options here. We are looking at route alignments on West Broadway, which is the green line that you see. And we're also looking at a Lowry, Washington route, are the two options to get through and serve North Minneapolis. And then down in that lower right-hand corner of the screen, there's the colored links, and these are some ideas of potential links to serve either one of those alignments and how we get to it. But we have more opportunities with the routes here. You know, we have two routes that we're looking at. But as you look at it, it also gives us opportunities that are fairly consistent along here. You know, again, we want to make sure that we're serving transit. So going north and south on these gray lines show the C line, north and south, as it intersects both Lowry and West Broadway. Those are very good station locations that we'd want to focus on either one of those alignments. A little bit farther to the right, you see on the dash line is D line, which is starting construction here. That's another bus rapid transit system that on either one of those alignments we could serve and have connections with that transit, those transit amenities. So we're looking at stations in that area along Emerson Fremont between Lindell Avenue and Emerson Fremont on both alignments. As we stay on Lowry, there's an opportunity where Washington Avenue connects with Lowry Avenue, where North Minneapolis is looking at the Upper Harbor Terminal. So we're evaluating that station, that area as a station location. Following down the orange down Washington Avenue, we've identified that, you know, West Broadway, you know, whether we're going with the West Broadway route or whether we continue up Washington to Lowry, West Broadway with the connection across the river would be a key transit connection and a key connection to the community there. As we start going farther south on these alignments, we get down into those links, as we're calling them, those options to serve either one of those alignments. On the green side there, that's Lindell Avenue. And at Lindale and Plymouth, there's an opportunity for a station at that location. There's some technical educational areas in that area and some it's prime for development in that area. And the city is looking at it. So that's a good station location there to serve the community. As we move over to that orange line coming off of there, if that's the connection let's move forward with to Washington Avenue, there's a potential to serve a station that serves the North Loop area in there. So
we just lost the presentation. It runs out of things. But Sam, the last slide is just your comments about anti-displacement. If you want to take it away from Nick.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So maybe we could just not use if we're out of slides, there we go. We could start seeing faces and have a discussion. See that there's a few comments in chat as well. So just want to share with folks here, share what we're hearing as we've been out in communities and talking to residents, talking to property owners, talking to businesses, and what we're hearing. And basically, up and down the corridor, we're hearing folks say we want improved access and mobility, right, for today and for tomorrow. So they're saying, I hope you're coordinating not only within transit investments that service today, but tomorrow as well. And it has to be for all of our community members, every demographic as we look at it, every income, because everybody does have mobility needs. We hear, and I know there's a question in the chat about improving the transit experience, that safety of not only of our riders, but of our pedestrians and our bikers is paramount. This is a huge investment that pays off for many generations to come, and safety needs to be forward in that as well. and that they hear concerns about security and safety. And we hear that in a lot of the work that Metro Transit is doing, and actually just announced recently about getting more community officers out onto station platforms and even at bus stops, and really handling some of the things that tend to be more those nuisance items and those behavior items, and then begin to engage our police department. Metro Transit has its own police department for those things that really get escalated, that need their support to deal with as well. I know there was a question about homelessness as well, and our vehicles, whether they're light rail or buses, are not a place to live. That's not what they're intended for. So working very closely with our community partners, with Hennepin County, who's a very strong partner in the development of this project, is really getting the needs met with the folks that we do encounter on our system, and making sure that those services are there that get them to the right places, that really can deal with some of the issues that some of our members of our public do experience, and really kind of connect them to the services that they need. So that is a very focused effort for us as well. And I think just along the lines, particularly about as we think about these very complex, very sophisticated projects that are linking many cities, many communities, many neighborhoods and businesses together, is that we really need to keep that in our forefront, and making sure that most of this tends to be good in our experience in the region, but there are also impacts to some of our residents and businesses in terms of some of their concerns about displacement and gentrification. So there's a strong effort that Hennepin County and the Met Council is partnering on making sure that that is being centered in our conversations as we develop the Blue Line extension. And that work goes on in parallel with the technical work that in particularly Nick shared with you. So we know where's the best places to put those stations, and making sure that any of our alignment options are the least impactful. So I just wanted to share that with folks. And Sophia, why don't you go ahead and kind of take us through some of the questions? And Nick is here, and myself. And I just also want to acknowledge that your comments and concerns are being heard, not just by Metro Transit or Met Council folks. So we have Council Member Chambliss with us, but we also have staff and representatives from Commissioner Lundy's office with us today, as well as staff from Hennepin County, and I think even the city, the different cities as well. So we're all hearing your thoughts and concerns. So Sophia, I'll kick it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sam. So we already have some questions in the chat from folks that we'll start to go through. I'd encourage everybody that has questions. This is the discussion portion, so you have a few options to get your questions answered. So one is continuing to add them to chat. You can also raise your hand and unmute and speak with us. So with that, I think Sam started to address some of the first question about safety, and we can have more discussion about that if people have additional questions. But going from that, are there plans to extend further north beyond Oak Grove Station?
I think I could
Go ahead, Nick.
So right now there's no studies for an extension past Oak Grove Parkway at this time. So not to say in the future it couldn't be a possibility, but not at this time, no.
And if I could just share a little bit and add to what Nick shared, part of the work that we do is that we want to make light rail kind of the backbone, as that's really serving our communities. So we know it serves, community members kind of north and south moving, but we know that the movement is also east and west as well. So as we move through design and kind of get closer to an actual alignment, about 2 to 3 years before the project actually opens, we spend a lot more time talking about how will existing transit services connect to that spine, to that LRT spine, so that there's good transfers that can also kind of dig a little deeper as well. So I just wanted to share and kind of further work, there is that look to see how can we maximize those connections and service opportunities.
Yeah, Oak Grove Park Station, connecting people, and also thinking about our transit connections to get people into our stations. So next question in chat is more focused on County Road 81. So in Crystal and Robbinsdale, it's kind of wondering about how our LRT works with emergency services. So ambulances to North Memorial Hospital was specifically mentioned, but Nick, would be great if you would be willing to talk about kind of how our operations work, and then also about how we're considering elevated in parts of the corridor.
Okay. Yeah. So right now, this is consistent along West Broadway and County Road 81. With the proposed center running at grade rail. That the rail actually runs with traffic. It does not have preemption over signals, so it runs with the traffic. There's a predictive priority, so it kind of knows how lights are going to change, and then it should go through with traffic. And there should be minimal stops at green lights. But if a train gets to a red light, it needs to stop at that red light. So the question on emergency vehicles and ambulances and how that works, well, that they do have the preemption on signals, and so if an emergency vehicle is coming through and they trigger the preemption on a signal, the train needs to stop for that. So they need to give way to emergency vehicles through there. So the train really, as it operates, it's not a long train; it's 3 cars long. So as it's going through an intersection, it's running with traffic. It needs to, kind of follow along with how the traffic operates through that intersection, and it does need to yield to emergency vehicles. And it's through intersections fairly quickly. It's not like a long freight train. It's as 4 cars go through, the light rail vehicle would go through at the same time. So there are other areas where, if there are conflicts or as we're looking at higher volume traffic, for instance, as we're coming up 81 and transitioning over to West Broadway and Brooklyn Park. Before, when we were coming from the freight rail corridor, we identified that, with the higher speed on County Road 81 in this area and the volume of traffic, as we're making that transition, we can't really do that at grade and signalize it and maintain things safely. So we had a bridge coming from the freight rail corridor over, and then it brought us down and at grade and running at just north of 73rd on West Broadway. Pretty much the same condition. We're moving over to the center of West Broadway is what we're proposing, but we'd still propose to go over that northbound lane of 81 on a structure on a bridge, bring it up and over, and then land it down and go down 81. So we reduce those conflicts, because of speed and because of volume in that area. And it is cutting across the traffic and not running with it.
Sophia, I have not seen another question in chat while maybe folks are thinking and kind of digesting some of the information that you've heard today. I would like to recognize Councilmember Terry Parks. Thank you for joining us, Councilmember Parks. And also in the chat from Anna, who is Commissioner Lundy's aide. Thank you, Anna, is a way to connect with Commissioner Lundy and Anna. They have been hosting a lot of events out in the community for folks to hear more about this and listen to this. I would also add, if you go to our project website, this takes a while to hear and understand and process. So we will be posting the images, the graphics that we shared with you today, so you can take a look at that. We would also encourage you that this is the first of our virtual sessions. Each of our virtual sessions is kind of focused on a specific area of the corridor, but please join us. We do cover some of the questions that you hear today. We're getting them throughout the corridor. So this is not the one and done. We're hoping that this is the beginning of a conversation. So Nick, there is that question, will there be a park and ride in Crystal?
We had identified a park and ride in Crystal at Bass Lake Road associated with the station there. If I remember right, it was around 190 stalls that we were looking at there. We assume that need for parking is probably still there, so we will be evaluating a state park and ride in that location near the station. So yes.
So we'll kind of give it a second for others to think of questions. I know there's about 20 plus of us on that might have things to say. So while we're letting people think for just a second, Sam put the Blue Line Project website on. We have an interactive map where folks are able to provide comments right now. So if they miss this event and want to give us feedback directly, please encourage your friends and neighbors to visit our website and to leave comments. This event has been recorded, so folks can also listen in later should they choose.
I would also offer up the team is here, both of Hennepin County and Met Council project members here. Get in touch with us. We're happy to come out to your communities, to your neighborhoods, to your businesses, and also for us to hear a little bit more of your concerns. And as you feel comfortable, we're happy to do social distancing if that makes you a little bit more comfortable. Just make sure we're connecting in the conversation. So Diana has a question here for us, and I'll go ahead and read it. And Nick, will West Broadway be widened for the train to run down the middle?
The answer is yes, and it's for both to fit the guideway, to continue with 4 lanes of traffic, so 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, but also to enhance the pedestrian access along both sides. So there'll be a trail on both sides of the roadway also. So the overall footprint does widen out along West Broadway.
Okay, I think that's the follow-up to that one, because it was just Nick maybe talk about how there are very minimal impacts along West Broadway versus impacting homes.
Yeah, the impacts with the widening, you know, there are impacts to the properties along there, you know, and some of those are permanent impacts. You know, we try to stay within the existing right of way, but there's locations, you know, depending on how the grading and works, that we'll need to have agreements or easements with property owners during construction in some locations to make sure that we can tie everything in and get the grades to work and not just leave a cliff or a drop off or something in somebody's yard. So we're working with that. We've worked with the city with homes along that area that there's fences, I think, on pretty much 95% of the way in Brooklyn Park along West Broadway on residents. We're working to replace those fences to be consistent along there, and we'd work with the homeowners on that. I think the city also has identified, you know, what that fence would look like, and then, you know, so maybe a maintenance program on it. The properties that are more impacted, where we're probably moving very close to the house, where there's a lot of impacts, I think we've reached out to those folks in the past. We'll continue to do that outreach. It's only like maybe four homes that have that impact. There was some properties that were that identified earlier in Maplebrook that the county did purchase those units a few years back. So really the long-term permanent impacts to properties are very minimal. The folks that had the heavier impacts have been contacted already, and we've started discussions. That was quite a few years ago.
Yeah, since the blue line is at in this part of Brooklyn Park along West Broadway at 90%, we do have roll plots online that show these kind of, you know, whether they're a few feet or whatever, the exact property impacts identified on our roll plan. So those are available online. And should you be one of those homeowners, like Nick said, we'd be happy to come out and talk with you. You know, we got to kind of catch up the rest of the project in a lot of ways, and we'll continue conversations with properties as we go through that process.
Mm-hmm.
Another question just in chat. So what impact will Blue Line LRT have on existing park and rides like Noble and 610? Will those park and rides become ghost towns?
I guess I wouldn't anticipate that, because, you know, those serve, you know, maybe express buses and other transit services. Those services will likely be maintained, you know, maybe even become more robust as they start interacting with the light rail. So I would say that they would. My prediction and my experience is those would not become ghost towns. They might even become more used. So.
That's correct, Nick. And what we've seen is that as the system begins to develop, kind of the metro light rail system and also our arterial bus rapid transit system, as Nick talked about in the C line is D line, is that it's just as we add more connections, more destinations are possible, and folks begin to kind of use the system more. So it's actually a really good benefit for us as clearly as a transit provider, but also for our community members, is that there are more destinations available to them because there are more legs of the system that are easily accessible now.
So we have a new question in chat, this person is, talking about some of the violence that has been in North Minneapolis this summer, and asking if that is a factor in how we will choose the routes and when we will decide. So I think there's a two-part question in there. It's just kind of our process to determine a community-supported alignment, and what are the factors that help us choose routes, because maybe I think that'll help maybe folks to get our process.
Yeah, I could start out and then look for the team to also kind of add their perspective on this. And we do not disagree. I mean, everywhere we've unfortunately seen a lot of our communities being impacted by violence as well. That does not mean they're less deserving of incredible investments in transformative projects like light rail. What we are doing is working closer with community members to understand some of those factors and how light rail or any sort of transit investment or transportation investment can actually be part of the community fabric. Excuse me. So it is not something that we think about in terms of as a decision or a deciding factor. It's actually how we begin to think about investments in promoting community healing and strength, and making more of our places vibrant here as well. So when we think a little bit about, the alignments, it's really what are the destinations that each of the alignments connects our people to, who gets connected to greater parts of that network as well, and really sort of what makes sense for communities. Absolutely. We don't want this to be disruptive, but we want this to be an investment that definitely provides opportunities for communities to realize their economic development visions. Some of our lines and paths do provide those opportunities, and that is something that I know our project sponsors are really interested in supporting as well. So I don't want to say that we're tone deaf to it. I mean, in fact, we think it's an opportunity for us to work with community members and really begin to think about light rail as a tool to actually kind of help us with some of that.
Yeah, I think it is a real opportunity to enhance our communities as we look at what the community benefits are. Investing in ways that can make our communities more prosperous and thriving will help to alleviate issues along the line and in the neighborhoods that we travel in.
Excellent. Okay.
Well, do a last call for questions as everybody's kind of thinking what they might be wondering. If you think of something after this session, of course, reach out to project staff. We'll be happy to have further discussion with you. And so maybe I'll turn it back to Sam and Councilmember Chambliss to kind of give any last thoughts or words of goodbye, welcome, and we can close out for today.
Well, I would yield my time to Councilmember Chambliss.
Well, thank you. This has been a good discussion. Every time I'm in one of these conversations, I learn something more about the project, and I learn something more about what community members want, what their concerns are, and that's going to allow us to have a much better corridor project as we travel from downtown Minneapolis to Brooklyn Park. This is a very exciting time. Our community in Brooklyn Park was very well engaged before we had our stall, and I'm glad to see that we're able to pick it up now and see each other either virtually or in person so that everyone gets a chance to chime in. So thanks everyone. I'm also available. You can contact me at Metropolitan Council if you have any questions, and if I don't know the answer, I'll get it to one of our very well versed staff. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Councilmember Chambliss. Thank you for everybody taking time out of their very busy day to join us. Hopefully you heard something new or exciting or something you may want to follow up with us, and we're absolutely available. This is a long process, but we do have some immediate decisions in front of us over the next few months, and we would just encourage you to stay with us. So with that, on behalf of Hennepin County, yes,
Sam, can I just add a couple of things?
Parks.
So what just happened here recently in Brooklyn Park is the city of Brooklyn Park purchased the shopping center on the corner of Brooklyn Boulevard and Broadway. We're making that into a business incubator center where people can start businesses. It's right on the stop. We also put up new housing now, affordable housing up on the 85th station right across from the college. Plus the Performing Arts Center is going to be there. And then the good news is we just sold a company from Maple Grove because they want to be in Brooklyn Park for the light rail. So we're, anytime we can steal something from Maple Grove, we're happy anyway. And then the lucky side for me is I got to see Riva now twice in a week and a half. So I'm a lucky guy.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for that update. I'm excited about those developments as well.
I am too. So thank you for the time.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Parks. And just Brooklyn Park has just been a wonderful partner for us, and their city staff does an incredible job of really encouraging that creativity and innovation, and looking forward to working more with not only the city, but your residents and businesses as well. Okay, well, thank you again so much for spending time with us on behalf of the Met Council and Hennepin County as projects partners and Brooklyn Park. Thanks so much, and we'll see you virtually or in person.